truly, this is one of my like top 3 favorite things he does in the entire series. Hey guys, it's Sarah. Welcome back to another video here on my channel. Hope you guys are doing well. Today we are doing part 1 of the Kingdom of Ash recaps. I can't believe we're already to the end of this. Like, I'm already thinking about new books that we can talk about next because this has been so much fun. If you guys have only found me through this series, I do also talk about a couple TV shows right now. I'm currently finishing up The Vampire Diaries and I'm in season 2 of Once Upon a Time. I'm also working on Good Omens. If you guys are waiting on those, if you're like here being like, where are the Good Omens videos? They're coming, bestie, I promise. That show is just so detailed and I want those videos to be as good as the first one was, so they take the longest. If you are enjoying this series and you'd like to stick around, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. We don't really have a community name yet, but maybe we should start thinking about one. If anybody has any ideas, drop them down below. Let's start thinking about it. Anyway, let's get into the first half of this book. She's a chunky one. Hold up, let me show you how big she is. Just for reference, okay? What? Are we serious? Look how big. Look at this giant. We're doing half today. We open with a Rowan POV chapter. He is still searching for Aelin at this point. It's been months. They haven't found her or any like real hint about where she could be, and it's starting to make him a little nuts. He's forgetting like himself and his needs. He's only stopping to sleep and eat because Lorcan, Gavriel, and Elodie are with him and they need to rest. He's basically like singularly focused on Aelin and getting her back, and that's all he cares about. Aelin, meanwhile, is being kept in an iron box on a mist-veiled island, which we now know from CC3 are considered thin places between the worlds in SJM's universes. She's being tortured continuously, and remember, at the end of Empire of Storms, we found out that she is going to be given the ability to have a long life, so her Fae ancestry is going to keep her around and she'll like settle into that form and be alive for 1,000 years. So there's like no end to the torture. She's keeping herself sane by like remembering the story of herself as a young girl and thinking about Rowan and the reality of their time together, because Maeve is like systematically picking through her memories and messing them up. Also, Fenris is in the room with her. He's pretty much permanently trapped in his wolf form, so they can't talk even when they're alone, but he's there and he's being forced to watch, and because of the blood oath, he can't do anything. The Aelin chapters are so small. Like sometimes they're literally like a couple paragraphs, but they are so heartbreaking. I'm not gonna go into like heavy detail, but just know that it's so much worse than anything you might have read about the boys in Crescent City 3. Like, it's so much worse than that, and she's alone. Fenris is in the room with her, and they have a connection, but, like, he can't talk to her through it. Like, she is, at the end of the day, pretty much alone in the room. What they're basically doing to her is, like, horrifically mangling her body, and then healing her while she's passed out. So she wakes up, and all the scars and wounds are gone. So she's losing time and she can't remember like what's real and what's fake from Maeve, because the pain feels real no matter what, and then there's no scars to prove what they're actually doing to her and what is in her head from Maeve. She says that freaking Karen, who I don't even care how we say his name, okay? Somebody said that they wish I would say the people's names correctly. I'm so sorry if that bothers you guys. I say them the way I read them. So seems like it doesn't bother most of you, but for those of you that it bothers, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna stop doing it. But Karen deserves to be called Karen because he is getting freaking horny while he's torturing her and she can see it. Disgusting behavior. She's having nightmares too, so she dreams of like Oakwald Forest burning and seeing the Lord of the North, which is the big white stag, on fire running through the flames. While she's on the stone altar at one point, we see that she has a code with Fenris, so when they can see each other, they speak in blinks, and they mean 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for are you all right, and 4 for I'm here, I am with you. 5 is this is real, you are awake, because remember, she struggles with what's really happening and what's in Maeve's visions. And then Fenris has a secret one, which is 6, and she says it basically means liar, because sometimes when he asks if she's okay, she says yes, and he's like, you're a lying little bitch. I know that you're in pain, just tell me, because we're here together. But in like a sweet way. They're bonding. Day by day, they're getting closer and closer. Maeve's plan is to basically like subdue her into giving over control so that she'll do whatever Maeve wants, i.e. like forge the lock so that Maeve can use the door and everything. Aylin's being drugged with water and food that's laced with iron, so that's why she can't fight back also, because she's really strong. Like, she's covered with the iron shackles and everything, but also they're drugging her. So her power is just like completely subdued. It's from Adian's point of view. He's still with Lysandra. They're dealing with early snow as they settle into the war camps with the Bane. It's been 2 months, we learned from Adian, and no one has figured out that Lysandra isn't Aelin. It's killing him, and also he's getting nervous because obviously Lysandra can't use Aelin's fire magic, so how's she gonna fight? He's still really, really mad about the whole like, I'm gonna fake marry Rowan and then have babies with you, but they won't be your babies, they'll be Rowan's babies, and you'll be like their weird uncle that's definitely too close to the queen. He's not forgiven her for that, so things are very testy with the two of them. Also, I think maybe we talked about this, but he got a tattoo from Rowan that's like a Terrasen knot on his chest, and he put all of their like newfound court names in it. So Lysandra's name is literally like over his heart, and he says it feels like a brand and he hates it. While at the camp, they get attacked by some Vogue. They end up keeping one so they can use it as a prisoner and get some information out of it. They get to Allsbrook Castle, which is Rin's house. They meet up with Evangeline because that's where all the lords have been staying. They've been kind of like bunkering there for a little while. Murtaugh has been so kind to her, okay, because he believes that Aelin should be queen, and so he accepts that Lysandra is going to be the lady of, I can't remember what it's called, Karev, something like that. That's where they're going to put Lysandra, and so he took Evangeline there and like let her see the house and the land, even though Lysandra and Adian know that if Aelin doesn't actually win, and even if she does, there's a solid chance that that asshole Darrow is just not gonna let Lysandra be a lady. So Evangeline's really excited and happy, and Lysandra's like, that's so nice, I hope we get to live there too. We meet Killian for the first time, who's one of Adian's commanders in the Bane, and he's like a good guy. Remember that the Bane aren't evil. Like, Adian was never actually fully working for the king, so they were kind of rebels in secret the whole time. So Adian's men are awesome. We find out though that Marath's army made landfall at another port city, and so they're destroying that area now. Then we get a scene of Rowan torturing one of Maeve's commanders for information. Elodie is watching and she says it's so gross that the first time he did it, she threw up. Like, he's being so sick and twisted that even Gavriel and Lorcan are like, okay, Rowan, we're done. They've now come to an area near Doranel, which remember is like Maeve's stronghold. Also, we find out that Gavriel is being like really, really sweet to Elodie, like he's taking care of her. She says that she's not really speaking to Lorcan at all, but Gavriel's been kind from the very beginning, and he's the one bracing her ankle right now with his magic. Lorcan is desperate for her attention, okay? Just like a little wet dog at her heels, waiting for her to bring him in from the rain. She's like, no. Never again. I hate you. Let's go see my baby. He's with the witches. They're out and about searching for Crokins. As of right now, Dorian's like, Aelin's probably dead, so he's planning on getting the third key and forging the lock, but he hasn't really told anybody that that's really his plan yet. He's aware that this is going to mean sacrificing himself, which is kind of why he's not telling Manon, like, yes, I'm for sure doing it. He uses the word marks to summon Gavin, but Gavin is so upset about what happened to Elena back in the day that he's like, no, there's gotta be another way to defeat Erewhon. I'm not telling you how to commit suicide over this, absolutely not. Dorian pushes and pushes him and is basically like, if this is the way we win the war, it has to be done correctly this time. Grow a pair and tell me what to do. So Gavin gives in and is like, fine, the final key is in Marath. He confirms that Damaris, which is Dorian's sword, and he's been thinking this whole time that like the sword tells the truth, because I think heats up when people tell the truth around him, and it stays cold when people are lying, I think. So Gavin confirms that and is like, yeah, it will lead you where you need to go. Dorian then asks if he's human, because remember, his dad was possessed by a Vogue when Dorian and his brother were both conceived. So he's a little concerned that maybe he's at least half Vogue, or like something is wrong with him deeply on the inside, and that's why he craves violence. And Gavin is like, I'm sorry, buddy, but I can't answer that for you. Manon, meanwhile, is also feeling a little emo. She is not sure if she's worthy of the crown, even though Astrid and the 13 are like, girl, we will follow you anywhere. You have to decide you're worthy of it though. Rowan is starting to get really, really antsy because now it looks like the commanders are lying to him. They don't know if Maeve is just giving everybody conflicting information to keep them all on their toes, or if they're just fucking with them. But one commander said that they were in a city that starts with an A. Acadia? Yeah, Acadia. And another one said they were in Doranel. So Rowan's like, where do we go? They're already closer to Acadia, so they could go here. And Elodie is like, I truly believe we should go to Doranel, because when we were there talking to that commander, I got a voice in my head telling me that we needed to listen and see. So I think we need to go there. But everybody else is like, well, we're closer to Acadia. It would be really shitty if we go all the way back over to Doranel and then she's here. So they decide they're going to go here first. Obviously, we know that she's somewhere with a mist-veiled river, so we can assume she's in Doranel too, which just sucks because it means Elodie was right. Rowan then has a dream of Aelin being pregnant and seeing like the rest of their family around her, and he is so hell-bent on not letting her sacrifice herself because he wants that future and that family with her. We also find out that Lorcan has been like secretly helping Elodie because remember, she's ignoring him, right? Okay, but her cycle came back because she's healthy again. So the boys were like, here's some shirts for you that we tore up, and she just assumed they were Rowan's and Gavriel's because they gave them to her, okay? But no, they were Lorcan's, and because she's a human and not Fae, she didn't know. She couldn't smell the difference. So he has literally been ripping up his clothes for her and just donating them to the period cause, and I think that's so funny. Lorcan is also just feeling like so bad, like groveling in the dirt over the fact that like Aelin is Rowan's wife and mate, and he's part of the reason why she's gone now. He just sees Rowan this hurt and this upset, and he's like, oh my god, if anything happened to Elodie, I too would lose my mind. I have to do everything in my power to get Aelin back. He finally tells Elodie that he was not crawling after Maeve. He was crawling after Aelin. He was trying to get to the box, but the blood oath, once it's severed, like causes extreme pain and like bodily distress, so he was fighting everything to just crawl those few inches after the boat. Gavriel says that he's telling the truth, and Elodie still is like, I don't care. Nobody talked to me about Lorcan. Don't forget about Chaol. I know you did, but he's back. He's here again. He's with Yrene, and they have no idea at this point that Aelin's been captured. Sartok, Nesrin, and Falcon are all still working together. They're on kind of like scouting missions since they have the Rux. They see the villages that Marath is currently burning. Are you ready for this? You're not. Yrene is pregnant. While arguing in the snow, the witches, but mostly Manon, get attacked by like a giant white bear, and Dorian has to help her stop it from killing her because it comes out of nowhere. It's like literally like a polar bear, just like jumps out at them. The bear shifts, and it's actually one of those giant spiders. It's the spider that took the years off of Falcon's life, and when it did that, it also took his shifting abilities somehow. So that's how it's able to shift. It's also, remember, the same spider that Manon stole the silk from for Abraxas's wings. They're gonna kill it, but then the spider says that she can take them to where the Crokins are, and Dorian's like, don't kill her. We should trust her, because remember, Damaris can tell when people are lying, so he knows that the spider actually knows where the Crokins are. His magic has like quietly been evolving past ice and snow and shadow, and so he's like, can I learn how to shift? He uses his king voice on Manon to be like, do not kill the spider, and Manon's like, okay, I won't, but like, don't talk to me like that outside of the bedroom. What the heck? We're in public. Aelin is taken out of her weird little jail cell to go see Maeve in person. She realizes, yes, they're in Doranel, but they're like hidden somewhere not in the main palace area. Fenris is brought with them too, and when they get into the room, his brother is there, also in wolf form, like sitting beside Maeve's throne. Aelin is given Mab's crown to wear, and then Maeve makes her kneel in broken glass. By that I mean Karen comes up behind her and like shoves her down into the glass. And it's not like, you know, finely ground up or even like, you know, well shattered glass. It's like huge, big chunks just laying in a circle right in front of the throne. Maeve says that she knows that Lysandra is pretending to be Aelin. Connell then turns into his human form so that he can roast Fenris and is basically like, you're a disgrace, you're disgusting, I hate you, I wish you weren't my brother, you've never done anything but disappoint me, screw you. Fenris is trying to like talk to him and he's like whining and stuff and growling, but he's still a wolf, so he can't say anything to Connell. Then Maeve is like, do it. And Connell walks over to Fenris and draws a knife. Aelin is like, oh my god, you can't kill Fenris because he is like her only tether to the real world. So she completely panics and Fenris can't move because of the blood oath. So he's just standing there watching his brother like draw a knife. But then Connell stabs himself and collapses to the floor, bleeding out. Fenris freaks out, but again can't move. And this is all a little confusing because the way that it's written, it's hard to tell if Connell was supposed to stab himself or if he was gonna stab Fenris. Like, we can't tell if like the order was kill your brother and he fought it and so ended up stabbing himself, or if the whole time he was supposed to stab himself. Maeve says like, you tainted something that was mine, Aelin, as if she's trying to be like, Connell wasn't good enough anymore because if Fenris isn't like fighting back against it and making it more fun for me, I don't want either of them. So it's just a little confusing. I like to think that Connell was fighting like the final command in the last moments, but we don't know. We're never gonna know for sure. Aelin is so upset by watching this happen and knowing what this is going to do to Fenris because remember, the only reason he's been with Maeve this whole time is to keep his brother safe, and now he's watching his brother bleed out on the floor, unable to do anything. So she lashes out and stabs Karen and then throws a shard of glass at Maeve and cuts her on the face. For a split second, her blood is black and then it turns red again, and Aelin's like, did I imagine that? Or was that real? She can't tell. Man, this is one of my favorite scenes. Aelin wakes up again on the stone altar. She's still got glass all over, like the lower half of her body, embedded in her feet. It's really bad. Fenris comes in, and he's in his human form. We, again, don't ever know for sure what happened, but the implication is that Maeve made him turn into a human again. In the throne room, probably in the blood of his brother's body, he had to, like, service her in one way or another, and then he got sent back to Aelin's room. He's been told that he can remove the glass from her, and then he has to turn back into his wolf form and sit in the corner again. She wants him to like go really slowly or just wait as long as he possibly can and like hold her hand and talk to her because again, they're very rarely like able to talk when he's in his human form. He thinks that she's trying to rush him to get it done quicker, and so he just keeps saying like, I'll be as fast as I can, I'll be gentle, I'm sorry, and they both cry while he works. It's so sweet. Lysandra and Aedion march with their army to the place where the cities are being burned and they fight those soldiers. It's bad, and it's made worse by the fact that she can't use her fire magic, so they keep getting kind of lightly wrecked every time they fight. Nox freaking Owen shows up in the camp that night. He is now like fully turned rebel after the competition. He's been working for Darrow, which is annoying, but I'm glad he's back. Even though they're all completely exhausted and struggling, Darrow sends a message to be like, get to my camp by tomorrow. Like, hurry up. Lysandra and Aedion are still fighting, but she says to him that despite whatever he might think, everything between them was real to her. Nesserin and Sartok come back from one of their scouting missions with really bad news. There is a 10,000 strong army rushing towards Aniel, which is Chaol's home. As far as he knows, his family is there, and the way this town is set up, the keep of it is kind of like backed into a corner, and there's not a lot of ways to escape. So they switch up their initial plans to go to Aniel and help. If they do that, they can then secure the Farian Gap because it's close by, and then from there, they can continue on to Terrasen. Cale and Yrene take a ruck and go early so that they can tell his dad and kind of warn him to hopefully evacuate the city. Aelin is drowning in her grief and her pain. She's really starting to buckle under the pressure, but she has a memory, like, kind of ghost encounter with her mom in the coffin where she feels like she's there with her, reminding her to be strong and to not yield and think of who she is and her people. So Aelin throws a fit and just starts banging on the lid of the coffin. She dents it, like she literally rounds the coffin out and thins the metal so bad that she almost breaks out. This surge of inner strength and power like shoots out of her, unable to be blocked even by the iron, and Rowan feels it. He can feel it because of the mating bond, but then when he looks at the others, he realizes that it was so much power, they all felt it happen. Now they know for sure she's in the north in Doranel, and they head that way. They know they're gonna have to be sneaky, so the plan is to lure Maeve out so that then they can go in and get Aelin without Maeve being there to be like a big boss they have to fight. The spider really did lead Manon and the 13 to the Crocans, so they get to that camp, but they aren't welcomed, you know, because at this point they've spent decades hunting and killing the Crocans, so they're not happy that they're there. We meet Glynis, who's one of the camp elders. She calls everybody off and tells them to stand down, and then reveals that she's Manon's great-grandmother. The reunion's cut short by 2 covens of Iron Teeth witches attacking the camp. Manon and the 13 immediately start fighting for the Crocans and like protecting them. Dorian is also fighting. He's on the ground fighting, and he gets so spooked by Manon cutting off a Yellowleg sentinel's head near him, and then the head like rolls and lands on his boot. He has a PTSD moment at the worst possible time and is just standing there while he's like, here, okay, another wyvern comes flying in and is going to eat him, like just swallow him whole. Manon sees this happening and is like bellowing his name, but nothing is waking him up. He is in the wyvern's mouth being swallowed when he just freaking bursts into flames, and like if he's standing here, he just sort of melts through the wyvern. So the wyvern collapses to the ground and he's just sort of standing there like the Human Torch. I like to imagine that his fire is blue in this moment. Truly, this is one of my like top 3 favorite things he does in the entire series. Like shattering the castle, this moment, and then I'll bleed whatever color you tell me to bleed. Those might be my top 3 Dorian moments. I'm lying. There's gonna be a part in part 2 that's also up there. Maybe we need to do top 5 Dorian moments. I don't know how I'm supposed to pick. Manon is absolutely horrified by the fact that she just almost watched him die. She yells at him when she gets down on the ground, and then when she realizes like, oh, severed head, I see what happened here, she like immediately softens and leaves him alone. Manon tells the Crocans that she swears she didn't know the Iron Teeth were following them, but Dorian is holding Damaris, so he knows she was lying because her plan was to have them attack and then prove their loyalty by saving the Crocans. However, 8 Crocans died, so Manon's very upset about that. We spend a little bit more time at the camp while everybody recovers. Glynis says that she's her father's grandmother. His name was Tristan, and he was a really good man. He loved Manon's mother and Manon, which we knew that already, but it's nice to have it confirmed by the Crocan side. He did end up having to remarry because the Crocans have men in their bloodlines that are witches, but they're really rare. So they tend to like keep them at home, like little house husbands, and like keep them safe. But Tristan ended up being forced to remarry, and that's how he had Rhiannon, because they need more witches. Dorian is trying to learn from the shifting spider how to shift properly. He basically sends his magic into her and finds the like kernel of her shifting power inside all the Vogue darkness, because remember, the spiders are Vogue. So he sort of looks at that little kernel and examines it to figure out how it works, then like recedes away from her and kills her before she can fight back. Him and Manon have been sharing a tent. I feel as though we should talk about that. They've been sleeping next to each other while they were flying with the 13 and like secretly hooking up in like little clearings and stuff whenever they could sneak away. But now at the camp, They have a tent that they're sharing. She asks him what he would do in her position because she's starting to realize, she already knew this, but she's being proved right about her thoughts on him, that he's a sneaky little court boy and he knows how to like navigate a castle. And she's never had to do any of that really because the Iron Teeth are so like cut and dry that there's not a whole lot of like sneaking behind each other's backs. They just kill each other when they're angry. So Dorian is like, I think your big focus needs to be on getting Glenys to like you because she's in charge right now, kind of. She's an elder, and they will follow you if she says they should. Because she feels vulnerable, she sort of attacks him a little bit and points out that maybe he shouldn't hate his dad as much as he does because, like, yes, his father was evil and awful and terrible, but also he was possessed the whole time. And he was fighting that possession in order to keep Dorian and his brother and his mom as safe as possible. Obviously, they both end up upset and nothing really gets done, so they end up hooking up instead. But this, listen, before you say anything about like they need to communicate, this is how they communicate, okay? They have difficult conversations, they rile each other up, then they hook up. Then after that, they talk again. Like they're working through things together, okay? They have a system and it works for them. The next morning, Manon wakes up and she knows he was right, so she's ready to play nice. And she basically is like, let's all help around camp. So she makes the 13 settle in so that the Crokins see them doing stuff like cleaning the brooms and like taking care of the trash and making the fire and all that. Glenys explains that the only way the Crokins can be called to war is if the flame of war is lit. This is basically like the main hearth camp gets lit by the Crokin Queen, and then that fire gets spread from camp to camp to camp because the Crokins all have fires in their camps at the heart of camp. So all of those get lit and the fire gets added to each fire, and then that brings all the Crokins to rally around the queen. But Manon can only do that if she's been accepted. Right now, the Crokins are planning on going to Elwë so that they can help, and Manon's like, excellent, we will be going with you. Darrow is the worst, and he summoned everybody to meet with him because he is basically like taken control of everything. Like he's put himself in charge. They end up deciding to go to Orinth, even though that is not where Aedion thinks they should go. A Vogue sneaks into the camp and attacks Lysandra while she's pretending to be Aelin. It realizes she's a shifter, and unfortunately the Vogue are kind of like hive-minded, so it sends this out. So now everybody in the Vogue situation knows that Aelin is not Aelin and something is wrong. Nox reveals to Lysandra that he knows she's not really Aelin because obviously him and Aelin were friends, and the fact that Lysandra didn't react to him was a huge tell. He's not going to tell anyone though because they were friends, so he knows that something must be wrong and they're fighting for her anyway. Because Nox is so close to Darrow as his like little personal assistant running from camp to camp, Lysandra gets him to help them. They want to drug all of Darrow's men and like the whole army that he controls and leave them behind so that they can take the rest of the armies to the border, which is where Aedion thinks they should go. Darrow's obviously livid when he wakes up and figures out that this has happened. Chaol and Yrene make it to Anielle and they talk to Chaol's dad, and he's just as mean and terrible and awful as he was the last time we saw him several books ago. They tell him about the 10,000 men marching on the city, and he sort of goes into shutdown mode and is just more of an asshole and not really like outraged or ready to help the city. He just is like, okay, I guess they're coming. Yrene is so annoyed with him, but she's trying to be a lady because he keeps making like references to the fact that she's like common born and beneath Chaol, but it doesn't really matter because Chaol's not really a lord anyway, even though Dorian like fixed all of that bullshit with his titles, so his dad is just being a jerk. Yrene looks him in the eyes and goes, "You're just as I pictured you'd be." I love her. I've seen a lot of people compare this battle specifically to the Helm's Deep battle in Lord of the Rings. Basically, what's going to happen is, remember how I said the keep is like backed into a corner? They're going to fight in the keep and in front of the keep, like on a big field, so that they can stop the Marath's armies from getting in, but there's really only one way in once they seal the keep doors and everything. The Ruks arrive, and there's 1,000 of them, but it's going to take Hussar's foot soldiers longer to arrive, and Marath's army is 3 days away. Lysandra, in her bird form scouting for the army, sees 50,000 Marath soldiers coming towards them, but they only have 25,000 to fight with. The fighting is so brutal. Like, SJM really just gave all the heavy hitting stuff to Adian and Lysandra. Like, it is a wonder that they make it through this. The soldiers are starting to wonder and worry about the fact that Aylin's not using her magic. We get some Maeve lore in the form of her telling Aylin a story in like one of her weird, secret, messy dreams. She shows her a world of what it could have looked like if Erewhon had never come and taken Maeve away. So Aylin is there visiting her aunt and like learning how to do her magic in this beautiful, wonderful land, which is like Doranel in like a perfect society. She tells her the story of a young queen trapped in a dark world. She was loved by 3 brothers who were all kings, but she picked the oldest one because of his libraries. She learned of other worlds that were beautiful and full of life and so different from their world. And then she figured out a way to open a portal so that she could escape. She talks about how she fought when the brothers came to take her away. She got rid of 2 of them, but the 3rd one she just weakened and trapped him away. She tells Aylin that she just wants her to use the keys to banish him finally, so that the world can be peaceful and beautiful. She's being really sweet and kind and trying to trick Aylin, but it's not working. So she ends up bringing like a fake version of Rowan into the dream. He's in hawk form and she snaps his neck. So Aylin feels the pain of like the mating bond severing, but again, it's not real, but it feels real, so she's so confused. Maeve then tells her that since Aylin is being so ridiculous and fighting back so hard, she's gonna go and she's gonna get a collar from one of the Vogue princes that are nearby, and then she's gonna bring it back and put it on Aylin, and then that way she can't fight anymore. Also, while Maeve is gone, Karen is moving her so that she's gonna be in a new location when Maeve gets back that's more secure. Rowan is the best. He made up that lie and had Elodie like spread it around in a tavern so that Maeve would think there was a collar and she would leave to go after it. Even though Lorcan is so worried about Elodie going in and out of Doranel and like spreading these rumors and getting caught, she's insisting that she's the one that's the best at lying and tricking people, so she needs to go. Also, Lorcan, Gavriel, and Rowan are like easily recognizable, so they can't go in the city. Elodie is in Doranel sneaking around trying to get information about Karen. She finds out that Maeve has left the city, but nobody wants to tell her about Karen because he's scary, but also she's a human. So they're like, girl, whatever happened between the 2 of you, like, you should just let him go and be glad he's gone. When she's on her way out of the city though, one of the Fae that she had talked to stops her. She warns her to stay away from Karen, but does tell her that if she really needs to know, he's in the western camp, because also, Maeve has been like gathering her army around Doranel, so the city's like way more protected than normal. This Fae knew that Elodie was with Lorcan because she knows Elodie is wearing Rowan and Gavriel's clothes. She reveals that she was Lorcan's lover and she wants to help because of that. This makes Elodie really self-conscious and jealous because she is like but a tiny 5'1" human girl, and this is like a beautiful tall Fae woman that seems really kind and sweet. Her sister then shows up and she says that the watch at that camp is weakest at dawn and that's when they should go in. She is the one that visited Mistward, so we can assume that this is like Rowan's ex-girlfriend, okay? So she's the one that showed up there and Aylin like growled at her, but she knew Aylin and she wants to help her for what Aylin did when she protected Mistward. The game plan once everybody's back together is for Rowan to break in on the south side. Gavriel and Lorcan are going to be waiting in the east. They'll create a diversion so that Rowan can go in and get Aylin. Elodie is a human, so she is waiting in the safety of the Glen in the woods. The 13 now arrive at an even bigger Croakan camp where each of the 7 like great hearths from each clan are burning. We learn that Rhiannon Croakan's crown has been missing since Baba Yellowlegs killed her, and that will come back. Glynis gives Manon 3 brooms and is like, go deliver these amongst the camp. So it's just giving Manon more chances to meet the girls and make friends, even though everybody is so cold to her. She does meet a witch named Carson though, who is like fascinated by the wyverns, and she tells her that Abraxas and Astron's mount are mates, which is so cute. Dorian's still trying to shift, but he's not doing a very good job of it. He can't figure out how the magic works and how to like make it do what he wants, even though he knows he has the ability. He gets really testy and ends up picking another fight with Manon. They argue about the fact that she's maintaining she doesn't care if the Crokins don't like her, and she doesn't care if Glynis doesn't like her, because she doesn't like anybody. And Dorian's like, girl, you are such a liar. Like, I know you care. Why do you think we're here doing this if you don't care? He admits that he cares. He cares about a lot of things. He even cares about her. And she says he's a fool. She storms off, but he just goes to sleep because he's like, I know I'm right, okay? And she will calm down. And sure enough, she comes back because there's nowhere else for her to sleep. And he's like, oh, was 3 too cramped for a tent? And she's like, but then in the morning, once they wake up again and she's like completely calmed down and everything's fine, because everything's always fine. They fight and then they make up and they're never actually mad at each other. She looks at him and goes, your eyes are brown, and then leaves again. Which means our boy can officially shift. He's not good at it yet, but he's gonna get better. Aelin is still in her dented iron coffin, but she has been moved to the camp with Karen, so she is confirmed in that new location. He's setting up a metal table with little fire bowls underneath it so that he can melt her onto the table. He's already done that with her hands because she's wearing like iron gauntlets that he would just heat up. But this is the first time he's done it like on her whole body. At this point, this is when Aelin is like, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to make him so mad that he just kills me, and then Maeve can't have what she wants, and Dorian will have to handle everything else. Rowan is outside of camp waiting for a signal, but he hears Mala's voice in his head urging him to go, so he's like, fuck it, we ball, and he just heads into camp anyway. Aelin's plan is to annoy Karen so much that he snaps and kills her. She plays into his insecurities and basically says that she's heard the other guards talk shit on him, nobody thinks he's a real man, and like just makes him feel small and worthless, even though he's the one with the torture devices, because that's the point. He holds her like over the fire, and remember she has an iron mask on, so it starts to burn her face. But she fights back and they get into like a little scuffle, and she ends up getting thrown into one of the like dressers in the room, and she falls to the floor. And at this point, like again, like I said, she's given up. So she just sort of like whimpers on the floor. Now Fenris is in the tent, stuck in his wolf form, watching this. He realizes what she's doing, and when she lets out that little whimper of like giving up officially, he's like, oh, not today. And he breaks the blood oath to stand up and fight. If you're wondering why he hadn't done that already, it's because it will kill him to sever it himself. So he attacks Karen and they get into a brutal fight. Even though Aelin doesn't want to leave him behind, she knows what he's done and that he will die and that he did it to save her. So she runs when he tells her to run. And he's still a wolf, so he just growls at her and she's like, right, and she takes off running through the camp. So she's escaping, flying through the camp as quickly as she can, fighting off people with a hot poker as she goes, except she is running away from where Rowan is coming into the camp. So Lorcan is the one that sees her first. He can tell that she's surrounded. There's like lots of hills that she's running up and down, so he's running towards her while she runs to him, and every time she like comes up over the hill, he can tell something else is wrong, whether it's like people shooting at her with arrows, or her trying to like zig and zag, or people attacking her. But then thankfully Gavriel shows up. So this whole time Lorcan's been sending out like blasts of his power, hoping to get Rowan's attention, but also to call Gavriel back so he can help. And he's been shouting internally like, to me, please come here. So Gavriel gets there first, and he's in his lion form, but he can still make a shield. So now Aelin is safe at this point. While they're running, Rowan flies above them in his hawk form and screeches, and Aelin lets out like a broken sob when she hears it, because it means that he came for her. They make it to the tree line, and Rowan shifts like while landing, so he sort of like tumbles out of the sky into his fae form, and he grabs her and is trying to like get the iron off of her, but all she says is, Fenris. And he's like, oh my God. So he sends her with Lorcan, knowing that Lorcan's not gonna let a damn thing happen to her ever again. And him and Gavriel go back into the camp. So they find Karen in his tent, and Fenris is there too. They are both fricked up, which is not good because Fenris is already dying and now he's wounded. So immediately Rowan is like, heal him. And then he puts Karen on the metal table, wakes him up. Karen pees his pants the second he sees Rowan, and then Rowan proceeds to flay him alive. Back at camp, Elodie and Lorcan are now with Aelin. There is this awful, horrible scene where Aelin starts saying, take it off, about her mask, because they got everything else off of her for the most part. They haven't been able to unlock everything, but she's not chained up anymore, but they cannot get the mask off. Lorcan is trying everything. They like try to pick the locks with a knife. He's trying to just rip them off. Nothing is working. So he starts freaking out because Aelin has a full panic attack and starts like clawing at herself with the iron, they're called like gauntlets. They're big, ugly things. She's clawing at herself with them, so she's scratching herself. It's really bad, and Elodie's just sort of standing there crying because none of them can help her. By the time Rowan gets back, she's gone nonverbal, so he's trying to talk to her, and she's using the blinking code that she has with Fenris, but obviously Rowan doesn't know what that means yet. They realize that they're gonna have to use word marks on her, but again, she can't use them because her hands are chained up, so Rowan lets her use his blood and helps her write them and everything, and they get her free. The second everything is off of her, she erupts into flames, and it burns off the like dirty shift that she was wearing, and they can see her skin, and all of her scars are gone. So we didn't know for sure if that was 100% real, but yeah, all of her skin from like neck down is completely fresh and new. Fenris is dying. He's over like resting on a pile of soft leaves in the corner, stuck in his wolf form because he can't transform back into a man, he's too weak. Gavriel quietly says he doesn't have much time to everybody, and Aelin looks over at Fenris and blinks twice for no. She goes over to him, still on fire, and she just wraps him up in the fire too and talks to him quietly. No one can hear what she's saying. She's like petting his fur and like comforting him. And then she cuts her arm and he starts drinking her blood. And Lorcan and Gavriel and Rowan are like, oh my God. She orders him to live, and because of the blood oath, his body responds and he heals himself, and he stands up and bows to her still in wolf form. Oh, it's everything to me. It's everything to me. This scene makes me cry every time. Like, this scene is so freaking good. I know the bar is on the ground with these men, but also Rowan is obviously watching this, and he's so moved by how much she clearly cares about Fenris now, and he knows that it must mean that whatever she's gone through has like bonded them forever, and he's like, God, thank you that someone was with her and she was loved and taken care of even in this like horrible time. Everyone is so thankful that Fenris is alive, but Aelin is like still on fire and clearly not doing well. The little folk appear, like surrounding them in the forest, and are like, come on, come with us. And Lorcan is like, no, I will not be doing that. And Elodie's like, I'll go. I'm going. I trust them if Aelin trusts them. So they just follow the little folk because they've helped Aelin in the past, and Rowan's like, they're probably not gonna kill us, I don't think. They take them to a cave where there's like safety and a fire and a big lake in the back of it so nobody could sneak up on them. Aelin, knowing she's safe, just lays down and goes to sleep. Fenris ends up curling up beside her, and Rowan doesn't want to like scare her or do anything too quickly, so he just puts his cloak over her and then like keeps watch. Back with the witches, Dorian is once again still trying to master his shifting. It's taking longer than he wanted because again, he just can't figure out what it is that is making it work. Everybody has different ideas for him, but none of it's working. Like his eyes were brown for several days because he couldn't figure out how to turn them back. They make it to Elwë, but they're too late, and a lot of the Krokans are already dead. Manon and the 13 unsheath their iron claws and start digging the frozen ground to make a grave for all of them. Carson, that nice Krokan that Manon talked to around Abraxas, tries to help, and Manon's like, no, me and the 13 only. We do learn, though, that some Krokans did get away, so 4 covens are with Nehemia's parents right now, helping them and trying to keep the country from falling. Dorian sneaks away again to summon Gavin for more information and accidentally summons Kaltain instead. I love that she makes a little surprise appearance in this book. It's amazing. Just like Nehemia with Aelin, she says that she can't tell him where she is or who she's with. She does confirm that the final key is in Morath. She tells him he needs to go, grab it quickly, and get out, because if he's not careful, they'll put another collar on him. Dorian is then asking himself, who do I want to be? Like, that's the big question. He answers it by saying, someone worthy of my friends. And then he thinks of Manon and says, happy. He lets go of his fear of not being enough and not being able to do things correctly and like not being worthy of being the one to make the lock. All of that melts away and he's able to shift and he turns into a freaking raven. Except his joy is quickly ruined by turning around in the air and seeing Manon, who watched the whole thing and now knows that he 100% is planning to go to Morath alone and sacrifice himself. You remember how I said Aedion and Lysandra continue to get their shit rocked? It's still going on. Ongoing shit rocking is happening over in Terrasen. The men are so beat down at this point that they're starting to like really get vocally annoyed about Aelin not using her fire to help them. Aedion is planning to retreat towards Peranth, where Morath will be forced to follow them over a river and they'll be able to like pick them off easier. Lysandra comes to talk to him, which means that she comes into the tent looking like Aelin, shifts into her true form, and then has like a cloak around herself because she's always naked once she shifts. That's context for what's about to happen. They get into yet another fight, and he reminds her of how stupid and ridiculous this plan was. He says he blames her because she's clearly not as powerful as Aelin, so she let Aelin agree to die, and now they're stuck with Lysandra, and Lysandra is useless. He says she ruined everything, and she's obviously very upset by all of this, but she doesn't fight back because there's not really a point. He's just raging at this point, and she said yes because Aelin is queen, and Aelin told her to do it. So what was she gonna do? Argue with her? Aedion knows all of that also, okay? He's just really angry. He ends up kicking her out into the snow, knowing she's naked under the cloak and barefoot. I'd like it to be known that Rin finds out about this and is disgusted and tells Aedion it's despicable. Inside the cave, Aelin's having a hard time believing things are real and that they've actually rescued her. This is partially why she's holding back from everybody, but the little folk assure her that it's real and she's okay with them. Rowan tells her what he did to Karen, and she's like, thank you, that's incredible, because remember, when Karen threatened to whip her the first time, she said she'd flay him alive. So Rowan did it for her. Then he cut off his head and burned it. Aelin finds out she's been gone for 2 months and 3 days, but remember, it felt longer to her because time was warping. Rowan asks to hold her, but she just can't let him get that close yet. She's not ready. She ends up getting into the cave to like wash off everything that happened to her, and he just sort of walks around like the edge of the cave with her, and she stays close because she loves him and she wants to be with him. She's just not ready to be touched yet. Her power, by the way, in her point of view, is like begging to be let out, but she's not doing anything with it. She hasn't used it since she set herself on fire when the iron mask came off. Rowan tells her that he knows he promised to protect Terrasen for her, but he could not leave her behind because he needs her and her people need her. A boat arrives on the lake, and Aelin's like, nice, we're getting in. Lorcan again is like, I don't want to go into a cave system and get stuck. And Elodie, once again, is like, I'm getting on the boat with Aelin. You can go above ground if you want, but you're gonna die because the Morath armies are like above them. And the little folk know that, so they're sending them through a little tunnel system to get to the sea quickly. Aelin is also given Mab's crown. The little folk have kept it hidden all this time. Since Aelin is Brannon and Mab's heir, this makes her not only just Queen of Terrasen, but Queen of the Little Folk. While in the boat, they end up in White territory, which, if you'll remember, was that weird creature that Rowan wanted her to fight back in Heir of Fire, I think, and then she ended up getting attacked by a Vogue instead. Aelin gets out of the boat and goes into one of the treasure rooms. Rowan and Fenris come with her. Fenris follows her like without hesitation, and Rowan says to the others for them to just wait there. In the boat, Elodie and Lorcan get into yet another fight, and basically he just tells her everything and like says his final piece on it, because he has been letting her be mad at him and like ignore him and all of that for weeks now. And he basically just says, I don't know what else you want from me, but I have been trying to atone. I have done everything I know to do. Okay, I've helped with Aelin. Like, all of this has been for you so that I can protect you and keep you safe, and maybe, you know, you can like me again. I don't know. And Elodie just refuses to even entertain it. Aelin is planning on collecting gold to fund their journey because they're basically out of money. Fenris turns back into a human again for the first time and then hugs Aelin. He ends up telling everybody, I think just Rowan and Gavriel are in the room, he ends up telling that little group what happened to Connell and admitting like that's why he needed time to just process it. Aelin gets herself a ring with an emerald, and then Rowan a ring with a ruby so that they can wear them as a signal of them being married. This is the ring that everybody was like, oh my god, Lydia's ring in Crescent City is a ruby ring, but her ring is described differently. Like Rowan's ring is like inlaid with a ruby, and Lydia's ring has like a huge rounded ruby on it, so it's two different rings, I think. But it is really interesting that it's a golden ring with a ruby, so I'm not saying it's not connected. Rowan also offers to redo Aelin's tattoos and add a new one for them now that they're married. Erewhon's army still hasn't made it to Aniel, but Kale's dad does say that his mom and little brother left. Kale's dad also figured out that Yrene is pregnant. And this is how Kale finds out, because he just never noticed. Manon fights with Dorian again and basically tells him that if he really thinks he's good enough to sneak into Morath, he needs to prove it to them. So she wants him to sneak into the Ferrying Gap, get information on who's there, and see what Petra's doing, because Petra's supposed to be there with her witches. And then maybe, if he does a good job at that, she'll consider letting him go. Aelin and the others reach the sea. She's finally ready to talk to Rowan, and she opens up to him a little bit about what happened. They kind of acknowledge that they're mates, and they're both really happy about that. She tells him she's exhausted and she doesn't know if she can keep doing this. He says whatever's coming, they're gonna face it together. And if her fate is truly to form the lock, then they will make it together and they will both die together, and Aedion can be king of Terrasen for all he cares. Then they bang, and it is really sweet because this is like the first time she's let him kiss her and stuff. It's very precious. Aelin then talks to Lorcan the next day and tells him that she can't trust him 100% unless he takes the blood oath. If he refuses, he will never be allowed inside Terrasen. If he accepts it, she's not gonna make him like join her court like officially and like fight for her or anything. She's gonna let him live wherever he wants, meaning he could live with Elodie. So of course he's like, yeah, absolutely, I'll take it, because he would rather just live near Terrasen knowing he could get to Elodie if she needed him than never see her again. Aelin then has to explain to Elodie though that she can't give her the blood oath, even though Elodie wants it and was so excited about it, because Paranth is so important and Elodie's vote in whether or not Aelin should be queen will hold so much weight that if they give her the blood oath, she kind of becomes null and void, and they might say that Aelin is like forcing her to do it. So it sucks, but Elodie agrees it makes the most sense, and that's what they decide to do. Shifts to make himself look like a Vogue and sneaks into the Ferrying Gap. He comes back and is like, surprise, surprise, Manon, it's just Petra and her covens. The matrons aren't there. So Manon and the 13 go in. Petra is not like happy to see her, but she's also not hostile, and she keeps her witches from attacking. Manon explains that her grandma is planning on like destroying the other two clans and taking over as queen of the witches, but in like a coup kind of way. Like she's gonna be evil about it and ruin everybody's lives. After making her speech and saying that she wants to unite them to find a better world together, Manon leaves because she doesn't want to force them into agreeing. She wants them to talk about it and make their own decision. But we're all really hopeful that Petra's going to be able to convince them because Petra's been good the whole time. Aelin has a nightmare that she's still being held captive. She's starting to feel really angry and more than a little bitter that this is like the fate that was given to her. She feels really selfish about it, but she's starting to hope that Dorian will be forced to use the lock and do everything and die in her place. Rowan's trying to help her feel better, but she's just dealing with a lot, so they're sort of throwing her back into her training routine so that she can get stronger again. The fighting in Aniel has been going on for 5 days, and it's not going well. But then Hussar shows up at the back of Marath's forces and sort of pushes them in on themselves, so they're squishing them now. Again, it's very much giving Helm's Deep energy. Also, just so no one's worried, Yrene is inside healing people as they come in, and Chaol is outside on a horse because he can't walk anymore because she's healing so many people. But he's fighting, he's doing fine. Nesserin and Sartok are up in the air on the rucks fighting. With Bort and Euron. In case you were wondering if they came, all 4 of them are up on the rooks flying around shooting people with their arrows. Aedion and Lysandra are getting closer to Peranth, but Marath's armies catch up to them. Rowan's cousins use their magic to freeze the river so they can get across, and then right as Marath's armies are like mostly over it, they break the ice, which uses most of the rest of their magic, but it drowns a ton of the Marath soldiers. Lysandra's been fighting in wyvern form, but she sees the men starting to flee from the battle because they know they're going to lose, so she goes back down to the ground, turns into Aelin, and decides to just fight on foot with a sword. The men see that happening and notice that she's struggling because she's not really Aelin, so she doesn't really have all of the strength and everything. It's not the same. They start running back to help her. Aedion catches wind of what she's doing and he's like, oh my god, she's gonna die. So he starts running towards her, regretting, as he should, everything that he's said and done so far. She gets scratched by the poison claws right as Aedion reaches her. Then witches arrive with one of the witch towers. A young witch goes up to the top of it, makes the yielding and throws her body down into the center, and a giant laser beam of power blasts into Aedion's men and kills 4,000 of them. Like, I know we saw that happen in Akawar, where like the legion up in the sky of the Illyrians got blasted, and the only reason why Cassian got down was because Nesta screamed for him, but it does not make it any easier to read. That is heartbreaking. That's so many people so quickly. In Aniel, Chaol, Nesserin, Hussar, and Sartok are all trying to figure out like how they're gonna finish the final battle. And then Aelin and her group arrive. She sees Chaol walking and she just starts crying and like throws herself into his arms for a hug. She recognizes Yrene and they have a really sweet moment of like Yrene telling her like, I did everything you said and more, like I'm back now to help because of you. And she gives Aelin the note that she gave her all those years ago saying it's a piece of her bravery. Chaol says they're married and Aelin's like, oh, well, this is my husband and my mate, by the way, Rowan. And so it's a nice reunion for all of them. It's really sweet. This whole scene is when we find out that Fenris's last name is Moonbeam. No, I'm not kidding. Is that Rhys's last name? Is that Cormac's last name? Help. I just want to know how the freaking teleport star magic power overlaps with everybody. I know SJM somewhere in her house, locked away in a safe, has like a full map of all of her people and the whole like family tree of it. When we get that in our hands, it's gonna be like Once Upon a Time level insanity. I'm gonna make a whole video just talking about the family tree one day. I can't wait. Falcon shows up. He's young again because when Dorian killed the spider, he got his 20 years back. So this is all fun because he is in fact the merchant that gave Aelin the little scrap of spider silk that she put into Sam's coat that then saved him when he got shot in the heart. Everybody's connected. Aelin gets confirmation about the spiders being Vogue and Maeve being a Vogue queen, so she's like, oh my god, her blood was black. Insanity. But Yrene has also figured out how to cure the infected Vogue, so there's hope. Also, this means that since Maeve is secretly Vogue, she's not really Queen of the Fae, which means that that title also goes to Aelin. She is really starting to struggle with the weight of everything, but also now she feels even more guilty about putting the role of death onto Dorian. Like, she doesn't want to do that to Chaol. Elodie and Lorcan get into yet another fight because she cannot wrap her head around how he could have ever loved somebody like Maeve. They're preparing for the big battle, which is hopefully going to be like the final stand, and she tells him that she doesn't care if he makes it off the battlefield or not. We get some really cute moments of Bort and Euron being together, and then also Nesryn and Sartok are just still so ridiculously cute. Like, I love them so much. Manon and the 13 are back at the big witch camp. Glenys tells her that the reason why Rhiannon was out and got captured by the Iron Teeth was because she was looking for Manon, because she believed that they could rule together as sister queens, and that was her whole plan. Dorian is spending a lot of time in his raven form so that he can get used to flying for when he sneaks into Morath. Lysandra survives and wakes up in a tent next to Aedion. He tells her they had to yield Peranth, so now they're almost to Arenth. Lysandra was so hurt that when she went unconscious, she accidentally shifted back into her regular form, so now everybody knows that she's not Aelin. He apologizes for everything, but she tells him that what he did and throwing her out into the snow that night was so much worse than anything she ever went through, and all the different ways she was like humiliated and degraded by Arobynn and the people of Rifthold. None of that compares to how Aedion made her feel. She's livid that it took her almost dying for him to be like, huh, maybe I shouldn't be such a jerk. And she says that he ruined any chance of them ever being together because now she doesn't want anything to do with him and she doesn't want to talk to him ever again. It's complicated because I see where both of them are coming from. Like, in Lysandra's mind, she wasn't that upset because she was never going to have to do anything with Rowan. So in her head, she was still going to be with Aedion, which is what she wanted all along. But Aedion has already given up so much for Terrasen, and so he's upset because all he wanted was a life with Lysandra and a family, and now he's been told, oh yeah, you're gonna have kids, but they're gonna be Rowan's kids, and you don't get to claim them. Ren and Darrow show up, like, right as he leaves Lysandra's tent, and Darrow is basically like, you are stripped of all your titles for disobeying me, and Killian is now in charge. Give me the sword. And he takes the freaking sword of Arenth. Even though Ren is livid about that, Aedion just gives it to him because he doesn't want to fight anymore. Also, Darrow says that if Lysandra ever pretends to be Aelin again, they will kill her. Then they realize that they have been surrounded and Morath is planning yet another attack. Chaol confronts Yrene and is like, girl, I know you're pregnant. And it's actually really cute, okay? He's like in the stables taking care of his horse, who, remember, is like a scary hell beast of a horse, but she now really likes Chaol and like listens to him and stuff. It's really sweet because Yrene thought that Chaol was going to be upset with her, but he's not upset with her. He's just nervous because he's afraid he's going to be a bad dad because his dad sucked. And she says, no, dude, you're going to be perfect at it. Relax. And it ends up being really sweet. Aelin meets Chaol's dad for the first time and just humiliates him in front of everybody, which is his fault because he like storms into the room where she's sitting with her court and like interrupts dinner. And we know our girl loves to eat, so she's just livid and she just lays into him and he has to like walk away with his tail between his legs. Aelin then makes the decision that Rowan's oldest female cousin should take over Doranel because she does not want that many crowns. Also, if you're wondering how that line of ascension works, it has to pass through the females in the bloodline, and Rowan and Aelin are cousins. So, in case you forgot, I'm here to remind you, I'm here to keep that fact close in your head at all times. Dorian shifts into a female witch and does a good enough job that he tricks most of the camp, but Manon immediately is like, that smells like my boyfriend, and so she calls him out on it and realizes who he is. She's still refusing to let him go into Morath because she believes it's a death mission. He just wants her to admit that she's afraid for him and she doesn't want him to go because she likes him. But she refuses because she's too afraid to love him. Also, they have this conversation while he is still in the tiny witch form, so she's like towering over him. while they have this argument in the middle of camp. That is so funny to me. Then the Iron Teeth matrons show up and attack. Manon fights them and takes Rhiannon Crokin's crown back after she kills the Yellow Legs matron. Then Manon frees Petra's mother and basically says, go back to your daughter. Tell her that the life debts between us are done, and she can do whatever she wants with you at this point. Manon then wants Asterin to step forward and kill her grandmother to like have that final blow after everything that happened to Asterin, but her grandma is a coward and she runs away. Glynis then takes the crown and puts it on Manon and calls her Queen of Witches, and all of the girls that are gathered there are like, all hail Manon, Queen of Witches, and they do the 3-finger salute. It's incredible. Rowan is starting to become concerned that Aelin can't use her magic because she had that like burst in the field that one time, but she hasn't done anything since. Fenris tells her that they burned her with it, and so he's pretty sure that she's scared. The group steals armor that kills Dad's just like hoarding instead of letting people wear it because he's the worst. The Morath soldiers attack and the fighting starts again on the new day. Aelin shows up late, dressed in like solid gold armor, fighting with a sword amongst the other soldiers. Nesserin and Sartok make the horrifying discovery that the Morath soldiers are trying to break the Aniel Dam so that the field in front of the keep will flood, which will drown everybody that's fighting in the process. Lorcan is way out in the field fighting, okay? He gets surrounded by several Vogue and taken down, and we basically just see him disappear under a pile of bodies. Nesserin and Sartok come racing back. They tell everybody what happened, and they realize that they do not have time to get everybody off the field. So no matter what they do, they need to do it quickly, but people are still gonna die. So all of the Ruck Riders that are nearby start like racing out into the field and grabbing people, particularly the healers that have gone out to help. Everyone's rushing inside, and Elodie realizes that Lorcan is not with them. She starts panicking. And Rowan turns to Fenris and is like, I need you to use your power and go freaking get him. But Fenris says that he can't. Everyone kind of realizes in shocked horror that Lorcan is not coming back and he's gonna drown with everybody else. Right as the gates close, Elodie races by on Kale's horse, and she rides out into the plain to get Lorcan herself or die trying. If you're wondering why she was able to take the demon horse, it's because it's a demon horse and Lorcan is protected by the god of death. I freaking love these books. We're stopping there, besties. I'm so sorry. Tell me that's not a good cliffhanger though. Will Lorcan survive? Will Elodie die trying to save him? You're gonna have to find out next week. I'm so sorry. If you guys enjoyed, don't forget to like and comment down below. I love talking to you guys each week. This series has really popped off, I think probably because everybody's reading Crescent City right now, so I'm really glad that y'all are using this as like a resource and it's helping you kind of make sense of the world if you've never read the books before. I love that because I love all the little details that connect everything, so it's really cool to see you guys finding those out now too. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you so soon. Have a good one. Bye!